So you've been diligently doing your rehabilitation for 18 months post-prostate surgery, but there are still no signs of natural erections. I imagine you're pretty frustrated and probably disappointed at this point, maybe thinking, is there any hope and should you just give up? So this is one of the most confronting points that I've seen some men in my audience reach in this recovery space. Many have heard that those erection nerves should be awake by 2 years post-prostatectomy. So when you reach that 18-month mark and there's nothing changing, I imagine it can feel pretty frightening. So today in this video, we're going to look at whether there is still a chance of erections returning at this point. And I'm going to tell you the 3 things that I've seen work for other men in my community at this stage of recovery. So the first thing I want you to know is that approaching 2 years does not mean that your recovery window is closing. So I've heard from men seeing no signs of progress at that 18-month mark, but then some of them have still gone on to regain function by 2 years, even beyond that 2 years. So erection recovery in this space is not a neat, predictable timeline. Everyone is different and it's influenced by a lot of other factors beyond that nerve recovery. For example, stress, sleep, exercise, weight, your overall health, the list, it goes on. And importantly, stress. I said that before, but stress is so important. And there's nothing more stressful than wondering, are my erections going to come back? So if you haven't seen any movement yet, it doesn't mean that those nerves are finished. It often actually means they're still waking up or that other parts of the system need attention before the erections can show themselves. A practical action step I'd recommend at this point could be to check in and tune up with your rehabilitation protocol holistically. So either with your penile rehab specialist, or if you want some new insights, you can join my membership, The Hub, where you can delve into our expert webinars and members forum where we talk about this all the time. The second major point I want to make is that progress in this space is usually very subtle. So there may already actually be some signs of progress that you can celebrate. Erection recovery post-surgery isn't a case of full erection suddenly appearing one day. Early signs of progress that my audience have told me about can include tingling, a bit more sensitivity, maybe a slight fullness overnight, or a semi in the morning that just wasn't there before. So if you're noticing some of those subtle signals, a helpful tool at that point is taking the occasional full dose of Viagra or Cialis to see if there's any response with just that plus arousal. This sometimes in this space gets called a challenger dose. Now, of course, please only do this if your prescribing doctor recommends that treatment for you, and it's also got to be under the right conditions for success. I've got a whole video all about that here. Hopefully there's a link floating around. Another really helpful tool, and one I feel is going to be an absolute game changer in this space, is the FirmTech Tech Ring. This tracks nocturnal erection activity during sleep, and that's often where the first signs show up because that's when cortisol is at its lowest. So we even have a webinar replay about erection health and progress in the Hub with FirmTech inventor Dr. Elliot Justin, where he talks you through how reassuring it can be to finally see that real data instead of just guessing. And he's often seen that that confidence alone can speed a long recovery.
We've been contacted by 2 men who had penile implants recommended for them, but they learned they had nocturnal erections. They didn't need them. Their problem was a psychosomatic problem, and they didn't need surgery.
So it's pretty exciting to think that there may already be progress happening that you've not been able to see. The third thing I really want you to know if you're in this position is that your diligent rehab has already protected you. And there's something actually more enjoyable that you could now turn your attention to. So everything you have done so far has mattered. I know it might not feel like it, but the daily rehab prevents penile shrinkage, fibrosis, even Peyronie's disease. And while it's hard because you cannot see the alternative universe where you did nothing, your tissue health is likely to be a lot better because of that work that you've done, because you've done that to replace that loss of nocturnals during this period of time. So if you now feel that you've done everything possible to optimize the physical aspects of recovery, this could actually be a good moment to shift some of that focus to the fundamentals of sexuality, pleasure, and connection. Now, especially if you're feeling a sense of pressure around your erection recovery. As mentioned earlier, stress is erection kryptonite. So pleasure and arousal are essential to firstly make that phone call downstairs to see if anything can respond in the first place, but also to counteract that stress. So inside the Hub, we've got a full suite of courses by Testevez that help shift focus back to pleasure, play, arousal, and connections. I highly recommend that if this resonates with you. And that point in particular reminds me of the power of recovery stories. One of my favorites is a gentleman called Robert, who's in our Hub membership. He's now 16 years post-surgery and he saw no sexual function progress for at least 10 years post-prostate surgery. 10 years, I'm gonna let that sink in. Once he found a touchy subject and he started making his targeted tweaks to his regime, which included Tessa's pleasure programs, he then started to notice morning and nocturnal erections. And alongside that, he felt that his sexual world was basically back in his hands. He could actually really enjoy sexuality again. His story is so worth listening to. It's a brilliant reminder that this type of recovery is individual, it's non-linear, but it's full of potential even years later down the track. You can listen to that via the Penis Project podcast, where Melissa Hadley Barrett and myself interviewed him, and you could even join the hub if you wanted to chat with him on our forum. So if you're at 18 months with no natural erections yet, please know this is not the end of the road. There is still hope and a chance for meaningful progress. If you want more guidance at this stage, I know I've mentioned it a lot, but the hub is the best place to start. You will find recovery stories, expert webinars, and you can get support as well from men who are truly understanding this experience alongside you. The link for that is in the description box below. So thank you so much for listening. As always, I'd love to hear from you in the comment box below if you felt like sharing where you're at in your journey, or if you've been at this point yourself, how that felt and what you're experiencing now.